Seriously, it's like overwhelming, right? You try to catch up on the news or, anything online, and you're just drowning in a sea of information. And half the time, you don't even know what to believe.
It's a real challenge, definitely. We're dealing with just this massive flood of digital content every day and trying to figure out what's actually, legit. It's a constant struggle. That's where these automatic fact-checking apps come in, I think, as a really promising, potentially, solution.
Yeah, that's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
Yeah.
Automatic fact-checking. We often see it shortened to AFC, and basically it's all about using AI to, try to figure out if a claim is true, and that potentially, at least, could mean less work for us humans, which is exciting.
Absolutely. And it's a field that's just exploding right now, developing so quickly. These applications, they offer so much potential for, really tackling this problem of misinformation, but they've also got some unique challenges, technical, practical hurdles to overcome. So what we want to do today is give you a sense of how they actually work, how they could be used, and yes, some of those challenges that still need to be tackled.
Right. We've been looking at this business analysis, and it really focuses on these fact-checking applications. So, listener, think of this as our way of kind of sifting through it all and pulling out the most important insights to get you up to speed.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to start, when we talk about automatic fact-checking, what exactly are we talking about? Like, how is it different from, I don't know, just doing quick Google search?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. So with simple verification, you might check where a piece of information came from or when it was published, which is important, don't get me wrong. But automatic fact-checking, it wants to do much more than that. It's about, analyzing the claim itself. Does it make sense logically? What's the context? And ultimately, is it accurate based on the evidence?
So it's not just about, like, the source, but actually digging into the substance of the claim.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does an AI even do that? What are, like, the fundamental steps involved?
So usually it starts with what's called claim identification and extraction. So imagine the AI going through all this content, text, audio, maybe even video, and it's picking out the specific statements that, could actually be fact-checked. And this is where, natural language processing or NLP and machine learning or ML come in. It's a lot of heavy lifting for the AI to do. And these systems are also designed to figure out, okay, which of these claims should we prioritize? Which ones are most likely to be important to check? Because there's just so much out there.
Right, that makes sense. So it's not just randomly picking things, but it's trying to actually, figure out which ones matter most.
Right.
Okay, so it's identified the claim. What happens next?
Then we move into evidence retrieval. So now the system, it's automatically searching all these massive digital sources, things like knowledge databases, websites, even archives of past fact checks, to try and find information that either backs up the claim or contradicts it.
Wow, so it's like an automated research assistant, basically.
It is, yeah. It's doing a ton of digging.
Okay, so it's gathered all this potential evidence, but how does it actually decide if the claim is true or false?
That's where we get to the evaluation and reasoning stage. This is where the AI is really trying to figure out, based on the evidence, if the claim holds up. And one of the key techniques they use is something called textual entailment. So imagine you have a claim like, dogs have 4 legs, and the evidence says, my golden retriever has 4 legs. Textual entailment helps the AI understand that, yep, that evidence supports the claim. And they can use other techniques too, like rule-based logic and machine learning models that have been trained on loads of examples of true and false statements to try to make that judgment call.
So it's like weighing the evidence, trying to, come to an informed conclusion.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what's the final step?
So finally, you get the verdict and output. This is where the AI says, okay, based on all this, here's my assessment. Is this claim true, false, or somewhere in between? And what's really important, it usually explains how it got to that conclusion, citing the evidence it used.
Makes sense. So it's not just a yes or no. It's like, here's why I think this. Okay, so that's the basic process. But the analysis we looked at also mentioned all these other capabilities these AFC applications can have. There's a pretty long list.
Oh, it was. And it just shows how much more these systems can do. Like, take real-time fact-checking, for example. Imagine being able to verify claims almost instantly, like during a live event. That could be incredibly powerful. And then you have multimodal verification, which is getting more and more important as misinformation spreads through images and videos. So now the AI needs to analyze visual content as well as text. And considering how global the internet is, cross-lingual fact-checking is also essential. The system needs to be able to verify claims in different languages.
Yeah, it's not like misinformation just sticks to one language or format.
Right.
So a lot of interesting features there. Were there any others that you found particularly noteworthy?
Yeah, I mean, for organizations that are already doing a lot of fact-checking, some of these features could be game changers, like tip line triage. If you're getting flooded with claims from the public, this helps you manage that, figure out which ones are most important to address first. Comparison functionalities can also be super useful, so you can quickly see if text has been copied or manipulated from other sources. And with deepfakes becoming more and more sophisticated, having those detection capabilities built in is becoming absolutely crucial.
Yeah, it's like essential in today's world. And it seems like transparency is a big focus in these applications.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, features that provide clear links to the sources used, that explain in detail how the AI reached its conclusions. That's vital for building trust in these systems. If you don't know how it got to its answer, why should you believe it, right? And there are other features that are super valuable for fact-checking teams, like organizational monitoring tools, sentiment analysis, and stance detection, that helps you understand the context, like the emotions and perspectives surrounding a claim. And consistency checks to make sure that, if you're verifying similar claims, you're getting accurate results across the board.
It's like they're really trying to build this whole toolkit to help combat misinformation.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about actually identifying where this false information is spreading, like tracking it down?
Yeah, a lot of these applications offer alerts and notifications. So you can basically keep tabs on the status of information as it's being shared and see if it's been verified or debunked. They often have archives of past fact checks too, which is useful for, building that historical record. And then you have APIs, which are these things that allow these tools to be integrated into other platforms and systems so they can be used more widely. Credibility scoring is another interesting feature. That's where you assign a rating to sources and claims based on, how reliable they seem to be. And some applications actually help support lateral reading, which is the idea that you should consult multiple sources to verify information, not just rely on one.
So it's not about replacing critical thinking, but giving you more tools to do it effectively.
Exactly. And then you have things like explainability features, which help you understand how the AI reached its conclusions, which is so important for trust. And there are features for check worthiness assessment to help you figure out which claims should be checked first, rumor detection capabilities, even tools that help social media platforms enforce their policies on misinformation. Some even measure the impact of fact-checking efforts. There are tools for collaboration between fact-checkers, data analysis, and visualization tools to show how misinformation is spreading, and even training and educational resources. And, of course, user feedback mechanisms, so the systems can keep getting better. It's a lot, and it's always evolving.
It really is a lot. I mean, it sounds incredibly complex. You mentioned earlier the fundamental, like, three-stage process. Can we unpack each of those stages a little bit more?
Sure. So the first stage, claim detection, that's where it all begins. We're talking about monitoring all kinds of sources, news sites, social media, speeches, anything really, to find statements that are presented as facts. And then the really important part is figuring out which of those claims are actually worth checking, which ones are most likely to spread and potentially cause harm. That's where the checkworthiness assessment comes in.
So it's not trying to fact-check everything. It's being strategic.
Exactly. It's got to focus its efforts on the claims that have the potential to have a real impact if they're wrong. Then you have evidence retrieval, which is the second stage. This is where the system goes hunting for information to assess the claim. It might compare the claim to a database of past fact checks, see if it's already been debunked. Or it might look at authoritative sources like government reports, scientific studies, or analyze unstructured data from the web. And of course, it's always factoring in the credibility of those sources.
So it's almost like building a case, gathering evidence for or against the claim.
Exactly. And then the last stage is claim verification. That's where it takes all that evidence and makes a judgment call. Is the claim true, false, or somewhere in between? And sometimes it's not a simple yes or no. It might be a more nuanced classification. And based on the verdict, it can trigger different things like flagging the information or providing more context, linking to reliable sources.
Okay, that's a great overview of the process.
Yeah.
Now let's dive into the technology that makes it all possible. You mentioned NLP and machine learning earlier. What exactly does natural language processing do in all of this?
It's really fundamental. NLP is how computers understand and process human language. So in AFC, it's used at almost every stage. For claim detection, extraction, and analysis, NLP techniques help to identify and isolate the specific factual claims within a piece of text. They're figuring out, okay, is this a statement of fact? Is it an opinion? Is it a question? All those subtle distinctions.
That sounds super complex. What are some of the specific techniques they use to do that?
Yeah, there are a few key ones. There's information extraction, which identifies things like people, organizations, dates, and how they're related. And then there's text classification, which uses machine learning to categorize text, figuring out which parts contain factual claims that are worth checking. Argument mining goes even further, trying to understand the structure of an argument, what's the claim, what's the evidence. And then there's semantic role labeling, which helps the AI understand the role of each word in a sentence so it can accurately identify what the core claim actually is.
Wow, it's like a lot of linguistic gymnastics for the AI to do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the impact of deep learning models.
Oh, yeah, that's been huge. The development of these transformer-based models like BERT, GPT, Roberta, they've really been game changers for NLP and for automatic fact-checking. They're so much better at understanding the nuances of language in the context of what's being said compared to older approaches. And that means more accurate claim detection, a better grasp of the meaning, and it also plays a big role in sentiment and stance detection, figuring out the emotional tone and perspective behind the claim.
So NLP is all about understanding the language. What about machine learning? How does that fit into the picture?
So machine learning takes that linguistic information from NLP and uses it to actually make judgments and predictions. In AFC, it's crucial for evidence retrieval, verification, and even prediction. So, for example, with evidence retrieval, ML algorithms can be trained to efficiently search tons of data and find the most relevant evidence for a specific claim. And for verification, ML models are trained on these huge data sets of previously fact-checked claims, so they learn to recognize patterns and then classify new claims based on what they find.
It's like learning from experience, from past examples, to make judgments about new ones. And you mentioned something called predictive fact-checking.
Yeah, that's a really interesting area. It's basically trying to anticipate false claims before they even spread widely. So you're using ML algorithms to analyze patterns in past misinformation and how certain sources behave to kind of predict what might pop up next. That could be really powerful. And then, since trust is so important, you have explainable AI or XAI. That's all about making the AI's decision-making process more transparent so you can understand why it reached a certain conclusion.
Right, because if it just says, this is false, and doesn't explain why, you're not going to be very convinced, are you?
Exactly. So XAI gives you that insight, shows you what factors were important in the AI's assessment, and then there are specific algorithms being used, like ClaimBuster for claim detection. It helps figure out, is this claim even worth checking? Then you have BERT and its variations, like MBERT and XLMR, which are great for cross-lingual fact-checking, handling multiple languages. And these large language models, like GPT-3 and GPT-4, are being used more and more at different stages of the process. They can help generate search queries, retrieve evidence, even make some initial judgments. And for explainability, you have techniques like LIME and S. And then there are other more established algorithms like support vector machines, random forests, convolutional neural networks, all playing their part. It's really a diverse toolbox.
Yeah, it's amazing to see all these different approaches being used to tackle this problem. Now let's talk about the business side of things. How do these applications and the organizations behind them actually make money? What are their business models?
Well, the business models in this space are pretty diverse, and they're still developing. For the applications and services themselves, we're seeing a few common strategies. You have the subscription model, where users pay a recurring fee for access to, premium features or an ad-free experience. Then there's the freemium model, where the basic version is free, but you pay to unlock more advanced features. For apps aimed at a wider audience, an advertising-based model can work, so the core functionality is free, and they make money from ads. And then you have specialized services that might use a pay-per-use model, where you're charged based on the number of claims you check or the specific features you use. And of course, there are in-app purchases, where you can buy additional features or content within the app itself.
Those are pretty standard, like, app monetization strategies. Are there any more, unique or innovative approaches out there?
There's definitely potential for data monetization, where they anonymize and aggregate data on misinformation trends, like what kinds of false claims are spreading, where they're coming from, how they're changing. That could be really valuable for researchers and organizations studying this stuff. And affiliate marketing could work too, where the app partners with reliable news sources or fact-checking organizations and earns a commission on referrals. But ultimately, the success of any model comes down to understanding the value for the user and whether they're actually willing to pay for it.
That makes sense. What about the fact-checking organizations themselves, the ones doing the, deep investigative work? How do they fund their operations?
Yeah, it's a bit different for them. A lot of them rely heavily on grants from foundations, nonprofits, sometimes even government agencies. Partnerships with social media platforms and tech companies have also become really important. They provide financial support, but also access to data and resources, which can be incredibly valuable. Some organizations can make money by licensing their journalistic content, the reports and analyses they produce, and membership programs and direct donations from the public are also vital for many of them. And if they develop their own AFC technology, they might sell or license those tools to other organizations as well.
So it's a bit more of a patchwork of funding sources, it sounds like. The analysis did mention a potential conflict related to how platforms make money, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky issue. A lot of online platforms use engagement-based models where the more views and clicks you get, the more you earn. And unfortunately, that can incentivize the spread of misinformation because sensationalized content often gets more attention. So it can kind of work against the efforts of fact checkers. That's why it's so important for them to diversify their funding and stay independent.
Right, you wouldn't want the funding to influence the fact-checking process itself. So we've talked about how automatic fact-checking works and how it's funded. Now let's talk about who's actually using it. Who are the main users of these applications and services?
Well, the main users are the people who are creating, sharing, and verifying information. Fact checkers themselves are a big one because AFC tools can help them be more efficient and cover more ground. Journalists are another key group. They can use these tools to verify information in real time and make sure what they're publishing is accurate. And then you have content publishers more broadly, from big media companies to individual bloggers. Everyone needs to make sure the information they're putting out there is accurate to maintain trust.
So it's mostly about supporting the people who are responsible for getting the information right in the first place. Are there other groups that could benefit from using these tools?
Definitely. Beyond those core users, you have social media platforms who are under a lot of pressure to combat misinformation. They can use AFC to automatically flag potentially misleading content and help enforce their policies. News aggregators can use it to prioritize accurate information so their users see the most reliable stuff first. Businesses are starting to use it to monitor misinformation that could affect their brand or their market. And government and nonprofit organizations can use it to promote accurate information on important issues like public health or elections.
So the potential applications are pretty wide-ranging. What about, like, individual consumers using these tools? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, there's definitely interest in developing consumer-facing applications that would let anyone quickly and easily check the accuracy of what they see online. But there are challenges there, like getting people to trust these systems and making them super user-friendly so anyone can use them.
Right. It has to be something that people can actually integrate into their daily lives. Okay, let's talk about the market for automatic fact-checking. Is it a growing field? Who are some of the key players?
Oh, it's definitely booming right now. The analysis showed a huge surge in interest and investment, and that's because misinformation is such a big problem, both in terms of its scale and its impact. It can literally make billions of dollars for those spreading false narratives, and it can even disrupt financial markets, so it's a big deal. The market size is still a bit hard to pin down precisely, but it's clearly growing rapidly, and there's a ton of potential for the future.
And who are some of the companies and organizations that are, like, leading the charge in this market?
We're seeing a lot of different players. There are dedicated AI-powered fact-checking companies like Longshot, which is aimed at content creators, and Claimbuster, which focuses on political discourse. Full Fact in the UK is using AI for real-time verification. Originality.ai offers a whole suite of verification tools. Factiverse does fact-checking in over 100 languages, and Factmata is all about using AI for credibility assessment.
So a mix of startups and more established tech companies. What about the traditional fact-checking organizations, the ones that have been around for a while? Are they getting involved in this new technology too?
Yeah, more and more you're seeing organizations like PolitiFact, FactCheck.org, Snopes, they're all exploring and integrating AI to be more efficient and reach more people. Even news organizations like the Washington Post, with its Truth Teller project, are developing their own AI tools. And of course, the big tech giants like Meta and Google are investing heavily in this area and partnering with fact-checking organizations.
So it's like everyone's recognizing the importance of this. It's not just a niche thing anymore.
Exactly. And there are other notable players out there like Check by Medan, Logically, AAP Fact Check, research initiatives like SciCheck and FlagCheck, and tons of innovative startups like AdVerif.ai, Octafence, Primer, VineSight. And then you have companies developing tools to detect manipulated media like Sentinel, Intel's deepfake director, Microsoft's video authenticator. And AI is even being used to generate news content with tools like Wordsmith and QuakeBot. It's a really dynamic landscape.
Yeah, a lot going on. So what makes these different players stand out? Like, what are their key differentiators?
Well, some key things are accuracy and speed. How good are their systems at detecting false information, and how fast can they do it? The range of languages they can handle is also important, especially in our globalized world. And then you have multimodality. Can they analyze images and videos as well as text? The level of explainability is another big one. How transparent are they about their AI's reasoning? And how easily can their tools be integrated into existing workflows? The trend seems to be moving towards this collaborative model where AI works alongside human fact checkers rather than trying to replace them completely.
So it's not about automation taking over, but about giving humans better tools. So given all that, who's most likely to buy or use this technology?
Well, news organizations are a big one. They need to be accurate and efficient to maintain their credibility, and AFC can really help with that. Social media platforms are also highly motivated, especially with all the pressure they're facing to deal with misinformation. Other tech companies might want to integrate fact-checking into their own products to improve trust and the quality of information. And government agencies and nonprofits focused on public information campaigns and combating disinformation are also likely to be big users. Plus, you have smaller, specialized tool developers that could become acquisition targets for bigger companies wanting to expand their capabilities in this area.
That makes sense. Now, despite all the potential we've talked about, the analysis also highlighted some significant challenges and limitations. What are some of the biggest hurdles facing automatic fact-checking right now?
One of the biggest challenges is dealing with nuance and context. Human language is super complex, and AI still struggles with things like sarcasm, irony, in understanding the intent behind a statement. The quality and availability of data is also crucial. If the AI doesn't have access to good data, or if the data is biased or incomplete, the results will suffer. And then you have the fact that misinformation is constantly evolving. People are always coming up with new tactics, new ways to phrase things, new formats like deepfakes. So AFC systems have to be constantly updated and adapted to keep up.
So it's like an arms race, almost.
It really is. And there are other limitations too. Like, technology itself still has its limitations. And building and deploying these systems requires a lot of expertise and resources, which not everyone has. There's also the human factor. People can be resistant to changing their beliefs, even when presented with evidence to the contrary. And with so much information out there, figuring out which claims are most important to check is a huge challenge. Plus, we need new ways to think about source criticism in the digital age. And dealing with claims that are borderline or where there's not enough evidence is also tricky.
It sounds like there's still a lot of work to do, but the technology is promising. So looking ahead, what does the future of automatic fact-checking look like?
I think we'll see continued rapid advancements in NLP and machine learning, leading to even more accurate and context-aware systems. New algorithms will be developed to detect those more subtle forms of misinformation. Large language models will become even more important, making things faster and more efficient. We might see more context-aware algorithms that can take into account the specific circumstances of a claim. Integration with blockchain could help with trust and transparency. Explainable AI will be essential as systems become more complex. Predictive fact-checking and real-time verification will become more common. Cross-lingual fact-checking will continue to improve, and that collaboration between humans and AI will only get stronger. We'll probably see these tools integrated directly into social media and news platforms and more specialized AFC systems for specific areas like health and politics. Collaboration between researchers, fact-checkers, tech companies, and policymakers will be key, as will developing standardized ways to evaluate these systems. And research will continue to focus on figuring out which claims are most critical to check.
So a future where AI plays a much bigger role in how we determine what's true and what's not. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, automatic fact-checking definitely has huge potential to help us combat misinformation. It offers a way to scale up our efforts and keep up with the sheer volume of false claims. But the technology is complex, and it's still evolving. The market is growing fast, with a lot of different players trying different approaches. But we also have to be realistic about the challenges and limitations that still exist. We need to keep improving these systems, especially when it comes to understanding nuance and ensuring accuracy and reliability.
Right, it's not a magic bullet, but it's a powerful tool that's getting better all the time.
Exactly. And ongoing research and collaboration are essential if we want to make the most of this technology and create a more trustworthy online environment.
So, listener, here's a final thought for you. As AI becomes more involved in how we assess information, how do you think that will change the way we interact with information online and the way we decide who to trust? It's something to think about as this technology continues to evolve. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.